I was 33, and I thought I knew what certainty felt like. It wore Leona's smile. It sounded like her laugh, echoing through my kitchen at 6 seconds past some memory, while she stirred sauce with one hand and cradled a wine glass in the other. We met at a food festival, one of those hot, shoulder-brushing afternoons where grilled meat perfumed the air and strangers acted like old friends. She reached for the same empanada I did, and we both laughed. That laugh turned into a conversation. That conversation became a date. That date stretched into 6 years of shared life. I used to call it fate. Now I call it irony. Leona could light up a room just by entering, and I'll admit, I was proud to be the man beside her. She had charm, wit, ambition, and the kind of grace that turned heads. People called us a power couple. Relationship goals. But they didn't see the late nights, the silences, the sacrifices I swallowed whole. They didn't see the version of me who turned down promotions to keep her near her parents' floundering cafe, or the one who skipped holidays with my father and sister just to sit through Leona's extended family functions. I told myself it was love. I believed it, so much so that when I finally proposed with Elise's ring, the one my mother gave me before she passed, I thought I was sealing a future already written. I couldn't have been more wrong. The night before our wedding was supposed to be magical. Leona called it a little sparkle before forever. She wore a silver dress, kissed my cheek, and the rehearsal dinner began. It wasn't magical. It was a mirror, shoved in front of my face. The unraveling didn't come in a dramatic explosion. It came in a laugh, her laugh. That easy, radiant sound that used to melt me, now it cut. It came after Carla, her sister, mocked the food I had helped prepare. "Let's hope tomorrow's caterers don't take inspiration from tonight," Carla said, wine glass raised. Leona laughed, not defensively, not awkwardly, just amused. Something in me shifted. I watched her shoulders shake, watched her lean into the people who'd made it a habit to belittle my background, my contributions. My mother. Rella, her mother, spoke about Elise like she was a meddling ghost. "She meant well," she said, "even if she was a little intense." Laughter again. Elise, my mother, had been the kindest force I've ever known. The one who showed up with soup when Leona had the flu, who redesigned Rella's cafe logo for free, who drove across town at 2 a.m. to fix a supplier mess. She was grace in motion, and she was gone, taken by cancer a year ago. Leona cried at her funeral, held my hand, kissed my temple. I thought she understood. But that night, when the people, who owed my mother their second chance, laughed at her memory, and Leona smiled through it, I realized I had confused shared silence for shared values. I stepped outside onto the balcony, Midtown's lights blinking below, mocking the illusion. I was about to marry into. I tried to breathe, told myself it was nerves that people say dumb things when they drink. But it wasn't about one joke. It was the pattern, the quiet edits, the complicit silence, the way Leona never said, "That's enough." Never said, "He's the man I love. Respect him." I stood out there for 20 minutes. No one came looking. Not Leona, not her parents, not even Carla. When I walked back in, the music had changed. Jazz now, soft and slow. Leona was laughing, radiant, as if nothing had happened. That's when I knew. To her, nothing had. That was the final crack. That night didn't ruin a relationship. It ended the illusion I had built my life around. I didn't know Leona. Not really. I knew who she let me believe she was, and I was done lying to myself. Voice and tone. The narrator's voice is clear, intimate, and increasingly assertive. You manage a tightrope walk between pain and power. Pacing. The shift from quiet discomfort to open confrontation is excellently paced. It crescendos at exactly the right moments. Characterization. Rel, Gilbert, Leona, and even the minor characters like Donna are drawn with sharp, memorable strokes. Without any exposition, their roles and values are made vivid. Dialogue. The spoken lines are natural yet impactful. They don't over-explain. They wound or comfort just as needed. Themes: loyalty, grief, boundaries, performative kindness, and class dynamics all simmer just under the surface and break through in the final third. A few suggestions for refining. Paragraphing for impact. Consider breaking this into more intentional, digestible paragraphs to give the reader moments to breathe and reflect, especially around key emotional beats or shifts in tone. Right now, the wall of text makes it harder to absorb. Minor tightening. A few sentences could be trimmed to amplify their punch, e.g. some metaphors or repetitive phrases in the final confrontation. Less can be more, especially when the emotional stakes are already sky-high. Ending polish. The final line, "I didn't run rewrite," seems like a typo or an accidental note to self. Was rewrite meant to be a cue for revision? If you're looking to develop this further, this could be the emotional climax of a novel, or even adapted into a short film or stage monologue. You might build backward. What was Dominic's relationship with his mother like in earlier scenes? What small dismissals came before this final break, or forward? What does a man do the morning after walking away from the illusion he thought was love and family? I didn't slam the door. I just walked. My father was beside me, Braina beside me, and truth beside me. The elevator ride down felt longer than it really was. No one spoke. I kept waiting for my hands to tremble, for regret to rise like bile in my throat. But it never came. All I felt was a strange, painful kind of peace. Outside, the sky was flat and gray, hanging low over New York like a warning. The street was unusually quiet for a Friday night, almost reverent. I breathed in the cold air like it owed me something. "I'm proud of you," my father said quietly. Braina touched my shoulder. "She didn't deserve your silence," she added. And tonight, she didn't get it. I nodded. I couldn't speak yet. My voice was still buried in that room, under years of trying to be agreeable, respectable, tolerable. But I wasn't a groom anymore. I was a son. And that night, I stood up for my mother. 3 days passed after the walkout, and none of them looked like the aftermath I'd imagined. I expected tears, maybe even second thoughts. Instead, there was a quiet calm inside me that hadn't existed in months. The weight had lifted. The lie was over. But silence from Leona's side, from Gilbert and Michelle, wasn't really silent. It had a hum, a persistent echo I couldn't tune out. I spent those 3 days sorting through memories. I packed the tuxedo, put away the shoes, closed the door to the spare room where wedding gifts were stacked in boxes I couldn't yet face, especially not the engraved photo frame, printed with our sepia-toned engagement picture, the one that suggested we had it all figured out. It was the keepsake box that undid me. I opened it without thinking. Nestled between old letters and trinkets was supposed to be my mother's locket, the one Elise wore on her wedding day, passed down through generations. A small, delicate silver piece with intricate filigree. Inside, a photo of her as a young girl, book in hand, fierce and calm. On the back, a quote she'd etched herself. "To give is to love without asking for a return." But it was gone. I sifted through the box, my fingers trembling. It wasn't hidden. It wasn't there. I didn't have to wonder long. I knew who had taken it. Only one person had been in my apartment since the breakup. Only one who would dare touch what they didn't understand. Leona. I didn't text. Didn't call. This wasn't a soft conversation moment. I knew where to go. Gilbert and Michelle's pristine Upper East Side mansion, where everything looked perfect but felt performative, where smiles didn't reach eyes. where the people who mocked my mother now held something sacred to her. I rang the doorbell. Rel answered with a rehearsed smile. "Dominic," she said syrupy, "what brings you here?" "I'm here for the locket," I replied, steady. Her eyes flickered, just for a second. Guilt? Recognition? "I don't know what you're talking about. Elise's locket. I know Leona took it." She faltered. "Leona isn't here." "I don't care." I stepped past her. "I'm not leaving without it." Silence. Then she turned and walked down the hall. I followed her through a home that no longer felt like part of my story. Grand, excessive, foreign. Michelle stood by the fireplace. She didn't speak. Just opened a drawer and pulled it out. The locket, holding it out like an offering she never had the right to make. Her fingers didn't linger. They knew. "Thank you," I said flatly, curling my hand around the cool silver. I didn't wait. I left. That night, I sat on the floor of my apartment, the locket still in my hand. The quiet was too loud, the kind that makes grief echo. Around me, the remains of a life that no longer existed. Unwritten thank you cards, unopened RSVPs, and a silence that made the lies louder. Texts had already started to roll in. Concerned, confused, then accusatory. "Are you okay? Is there still a wedding? You should talk to her, Dom. She's devastated. You embarrassed her. You made a scene." And from Leona, first soft, then defensive, then blaming. I didn't mean to laugh. I didn't realize it mattered that much. You could have pulled me aside. You humiliated me. Each message chipped away at the last remnants of illusion. Not because I missed her, but because it confirmed what I feared. She didn't understand. Not then, not now, maybe not ever. She broke my heart, not with cruelty, but with cowardice. So I made a decision. I opened our joint wedding fund, over $18,000. Money meant for honeymoons, homes, maybe children. I stared at the number, then did what Elise would have done. I donated it all to a cancer support foundation in her name, not for revenge, for meaning. Somewhere, another mother was fighting for more time. Maybe Elise's name could help. Then, I sent Leona a final message. "The wedding fund has been donated to the Elise Warren Cancer Support Initiative. She helped your family once. Now she'll help others. Take care." She never replied. I didn't expect her to. She preferred closure that looked good on paper, clean, quiet, convenient. But some silences scream louder than any apology. In the days that followed, I returned to the places Elise loved. The bookstore, the bakery, the park bench where she sipped tea and read. I didn't cry, not outwardly, but something in me cracked open, not from weakness, from release. One afternoon, I got a letter. No return address, just one line. "She would have been proud of you." No signature. But I knew. Maybe it was Brina, maybe my father. Maybe someone who had seen me stand up in that rooftop room full of polite betrayal. It didn't matter. I folded the note and placed it inside the locket. I wore it again. Not for show. To anchor me. September 16th came. What would have been my wedding day? No ceremony, no guests. Just me in the greenhouse Elise used to escape to when life grew too loud. I hadn't returned since she passed. The path felt longer, not in distance, but in everything I had to let go of to arrive. I used the spare key under the ceramic frog she once called ridiculous but lucky. Inside, the greenhouse breathed, humid and earthy. Ferns had overgrown their pots. Orchids wilted, but still the place pulsed with memory. I sat on her old bench, overlooking her corner of succulents and sage. The locket was warm against my chest. I removed it, held it in my palm. I'd almost lost it, to someone who didn't deserve it. Almost said I do to someone who couldn't say I will when it mattered. But I was here now. Exactly where I was, meant to be. A few people had called me brave since I walked away, but I didn't feel brave. I felt undone. Walking away hadn't been courage. It was survival. It was remembering who I was before I tried to become someone who could survive. In Leona's world, I pulled Elise's garden notebook from my coat pocket, turned to a fresh page, and wrote, September 16th. What would have been my wedding day? I waited for bitterness, for regret, but all I felt was stillness. Like the storm had passed, and all that remained was air I could finally breathe. I promise, I whispered aloud, that the future I build from here will honor you. It wasn't a vow under an altar, but it mattered more than any I could have spoken before a crowd. I promised Elise I'd never contort myself again for love that demanded I shrink. I promised never to let silence stand in for strength. I promised to live fully, in memory, in truth, in love that didn't require begging. You're not gone, I whispered, pressing the locket to my lips. Not where it counts. The sun shifted, casting gold through the glass above me, lighting the dust like stars. I stayed for hours, just breathing, just remembering. Closure was a myth. What I found instead was clarity. I thought of Leona then, not with hate, not even pain, just detachment. She wasn't evil, just small. Small when it mattered most. She lost me the second she laughed. She lost the right to say Elise's name when she turned a legacy into a punchline. Before I left, I clipped a sprig of rosemary, Elise's favorite. For remembrance, she used to say. I tucked it behind my ear. There was no wedding ring, no guests, no toasts, just me. Walking home with a sprig of rosemary and a vow whispered to the sky. I wasn't mourning what I'd lost. I was honoring what I still carried, her love, her legacy, my name, Dominic Warren. Not the groom, not the mistake, just a man, finally free.